YouTubers, Kara Grandel here, and I am getting ready to do a video talking about the Back to Eden style garden and what it looks like after a year, checking to see if it is quote unquote no dig, no weed, no till, it's a principle. So I just wanted to show like a real sample of what the weeds look like. But it's Oregon, so how do you recognize an Oregonian? When the sun is out, they look like this. Oh yes, we remember you, sunshine. Oh, that just feels so good. We've been in the clouds for weeks. Spring is here, although we can't trust it yet. My last frost date was yesterday, but I don't think that I would put all my little babies out. It's almost like this game. I go into my greenhouse and I think, which one of you am I willing to sacrifice if we actually get another frost? Like, which one of you will not break my heart and crush my spirit if you die an overnight death? So we're not quite ready to trust it, but I have slipped a few out there just to get that little fun. So I get to play outside for several hours today because I already did my writerly duties. I actually got to create today. Got several. The way you count for writing is by how many thousands of words written. So I've got 1,600 words written today. It's a good writing day. So I feel like a little kid who's out on recess. So for our recess fun, let's go look at the weeds. Want to come? All right, I don't want this to be too long and laborious, but it needs to be seen. So like any place there was a space of earth open, then I tend to get some weeds. And this is actually what it looks like when you have straw that goes to seed. So not hay, but straw. Some people are like, it doesn't have seed in it, it's a second harvesting or whatever, but it does. The one thing that's nice though is that this is an annual and not a perennial. So once you uproot it and the roots dry out, it won't actually be cloying and annoying. So so I have, every once in a while I have these places that break through and they have weeds, just a little tiny seed weed here. This is potatoes. See, these are potatoes that must have not got all the way harvested last year. So I'll probably leave those volunteers to come up just because. Ooh, and look at the symptoms of a battle well won. It is definitely Slugmageddon here. And if I don't work really hard on the slugs, I'm not sure I'll get a single carrot, or some of my other stuff is actually proved to succumb to the challenge. I have this Kara philosophy, this Kara idea, surmise, which my kids make fun of me because I have these all the time. It's not proven by fact. It might be proven a little bit by experience, but it's just as much possibly wrong as it is right. But it just makes sense to me. And that is, if I consistently use offensive tactics to get rid of the slugs in my garden, then I will slowly, eventually have less slugs in my garden because I'm pretty sure that I'm infested. Oregon always has slugs. It's inevitable. We are basically a giant greenhouse. But my theory, my Kara theory, is that if I continually attack aggressively to get them under control, that eventually they won't just be absolutely everywhere. And I've never really taken this offensive of a strategy, but I've also never done a whole lot of stuff that I've been doing. And so that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. The war on slugs continues, and I'm not sure who's winning at this point. I've lost a few soldiers. A few brassica soldiers have gone down. Back to the update on the weeds. Okay, so we got to take a look here. So obviously I've mulched in from last year, and every once in a while we get breakthroughs, like I said before, of the straw, like this kind of thing. That doesn't bother me too bad. So I'm going to show you a place where different things look different. So I've bark chipped my pads but I haven't bark chipped where I plant. I've mulched here, but so this is actually probably like the food forest version, the Back to Eden, where you do the heavy mulch. This is ready for planting. It has the has mulch on it. It's just not the bark chips because it's easier for me to work with. But if you'll notice in my walkways, see if I can get my shadow to not follow me here. All of these little, where are they at here? All of these little guys are actually hollyhocks. Look at this. So I love the hollyhocks. I really love having flowers in my garden as well as edibles. And these hollyhocks are seeds that are just from the actual plant. And if you look over here, it's like maddeningly thick. So I will probably come in and weed some of that. I'll probably, I'm supposed to get a new batch of bark chips, and I'll probably thicken it out over the top and see how that goes. But this is a fairly bare patch that was left exposed, and pretty much what's coming up in there is the hollyhock seeds. So interesting. I didn't know that hollyhocks would be able to seed right in the bark chips, and I'll probably let one or two grow up, but I already have one or two. That's a hollyhock there, chives, and then a hollyhock over here, which will be pretty fun. But I had this conversation with my bark chip lady. So I called Lorinda, who is my local bark chip provider. You know, they have a company that takes care of trees and stuff in our local area, and I've been on the hunt for bark chips from them for a couple of months, and they've had work that took them out of the area over the winter and different things like that. So I was talking with her, and they have 2 trucks that they keep busy all the time with tree removal and different things. And she said, you know what's really crazy? She goes, everybody's keeping their chips. She goes, 2 years ago, we would have never had this problem. I said, we were begging people to take them, and nobody would take them. And and I said, I know what's happening. And she's like, what? I go, there's this phenomenon that's happening. People are figuring about this thing called Back to Eden gardening, or mulching in place inside their flower beds. And I said, it's happening all over the place. It's, people are starting to have their gardens more and growing more food. And I said, and that's totally what it is. I said, and I explained to her the philosophy, and she's like, that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying, we're using this in our garden. We're using this in our garden. And so, your bark chips are probably a little hard to get, but it's still worth chasing after them, because even one good load, really, it takes a lot of work to spread that around with a wheelbarrow and get it settled in where it's supposed to be. But with my food forest, I have need for several, and I have a good location for them to dump, and they're legit 1 mile away from my house. And so they're happy to have me as that standby when they get backlogged. And with spring being here and more people willing to actually have the work of getting the tree removed from their property, it should get easier. So I thought that was interesting, though, that it's actually affecting the bark chip company. I mean, that's usually their waste product that they have a hard time getting rid of. And so supply and demand, those free bark chips, they might go away here if everybody keeps stepping up their garden game. Back to the weed tour. Okay, so this is my most active, like, winter, coming out of winter bed, where I've been, you know, that's my radishes coming up there, and the carrots that the slugs haven't gotten are slowly coming up in here. I mean, sadly, I'll probably have to replant because they're there, but it's really hard to see. They're so thin, you know. They're there, but they're small. Well, everywhere that I have exposed the soil, you can see that the weeds are taking off. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Like, these are radishes, those big meat radishes, and got the weeds in the between. Got the weeds in between, you know. Like I said, we're kind of a greenhouse, so we grow, you know, in between the garlic here where they can get out. So it's time for me to come in and really get after it. But part of me is thinking about the mulch that I want to use to cover it back in, because the exposed dirt will grow weeds. And you know, every once in a while one breaks through. There was always a definite line between where my bark chips ended and where my bed began, and I think maybe not so thick with the mulch here, so I kind of have this tendency to get weeds that come up right in the seam. See, that's where there's weeds down there. But it's still worth it, and I'll show you what it would look like if it was completely exposed, because I think it's worth comparison. So again, here I have straw seeding. This is straw seed, so this is an annual, so it won't be devastating. But the part I'm excited about in here is I had an experiment with winter potatoes. I actually planted these potatoes in November, and then I wasn't sure if they would get frozen out or whatever, but everywhere it's like mounded up like this. If I was to dig back under there, there's actually potato plants coming up. So I'm excited because, you know, pretty soon some of these weeds will get naturally choked out by the plant life that's coming up in there. So, you know, and then the other spot is that I get the weeds is like at the base of, like, here's a healthy artichoke. It was a 1-year-old baby plant last year, and now it's coming up pretty good. But if you look underneath here where the dirt is exposed, the weed factor is coming. So I am going to start practicing chop and drop, like right in the midst of this stuff. But right now I don't think I have enough to chop and drop to create the mulch that I'll need to cover this in. But the lawn mowing season has begun, so my compost piles are covered, and there's all kinds of bugs and critters starting to come around and take over and make their presence known here. But this little section right here, I had good soil put on over the top here, and I did this all last year and this year. I didn't ever put any like mulch that's meant to keep out the light, like the straw or leaves or anything like that. It just had good soil put on it. And this is what my garden would look like every spring. Do you see how thick these weeds are back in here underneath this little chair? My entire garden would look like this. And my husband would rototill it under, and then he would rototill it under once, and it would be like early, somewhere in March, where we would have maybe a little dry patch where he could get away with it, because, you know, when Oregon rains really light up, you can't really do anything with the rototiller because it's just big mud clods. And then after, you know, another month of the rains and whatever, probably like right now, like the first planting weekend of the year, he would rototill it again, because they would already be back. The weeds would start out like this high, a whole carpet of them, and he'd rototill it under, and then in like a week, in like a month, there would be this whole layer of weeds again. And so we would have to till that under again, and then you're planting your seeds and starting to fight the weed crop that's coming up amongst your happy, healthy plants. And so I am really happy to say there's no rototilling going on. I think this will probably take me an hour, a good hour, to be ruthless and go in and, you know, pull up all the weeds that are annoying me. And then, but at the same time, I have so many things in here that are growing, the different chard. I actually just noticed these are clippings off my grape plant. I think I have discovered since doing Back to Eden gardening that I love propagation. So when I have little buds coming on these plants, I'm like, yay, they're gonna live, they're gonna make it. There it is, one, two, three, at least 3 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of the 6. Oh no, that one's got some life on it too. And that one does too. So 6 for 6 for coming alive with the cuttings off of my last year's grape plant. So yay. And my dad is an auction goer, and we have a local auction that's got all kinds of crapola in it and all kinds of possible things to use. And he got me a steaming juicer, so I can steam and make my grape juice concentrate. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not a big canner, but that might get me in there. I might save up some of that for it. So I do want to show you one other little area. Actually 2. I got a lesson to learn about mulching for weed prevention, and then I actually want to show you one little area here before I leave the garden. Actually warm enough, I might actually get to peel off the sweatshirt. Okay, so I think I've showed you this in past videos. This is where my mustard seed had come and gone to seed, and I'm actually kind of excited about the little flowers, because anything that's blooming this time of year, it just sort of sings to my soul. And I don't know what this weed is. It's all over, if it has any beneficial properties or not. And these ones are Arugula, which I might actually collect seeds on this. So that's also a new thing. I collected my first seeds last year, and I had a lot of fun. So I might just let this come up for a little bit longer. My Lettuce is here and some carrots that I may save from the slugs. We'll see. This is the kind of grass that is not an annual. So this is the kind that is invasive and would just kind of get out of hand. And it's interesting because I think this is probably the only place I have it in my garden. And it is in this exposed patch. So, ooh, look at that demonstration. Slug 101. It's just a tiny one, but he's there. Can you even see that? He's like hiding in there, right there. Nasty slug eating away. So, like I said, we got to go offensive on those slugs. Go all cray-cray on their hindies until we can kill them out. Snow peas are coming along, which is so nice. I'm mostly successful with my early planting, but I do think I'll have to come back in and do some of the beans and flowering peas, sweet peas. That's spinach and bok choy. This one's bok choy, the other one's spinach. So yeah, herbs are starting to come back on. That's another hollyhock there. Might be too many for one garden space, but that's what I have my food forest for. Yay! Oh look, some of my bulbs. This was something I did last year, is put bulbs inside my garden because I'm not tilling anymore. I can put these little kind of, I think those are a type of hyacinth. They're not the clustered hyacinth. And we got some over there, and that's fun. So last year when I was mulching, I actually got to a point where in the summertime I could take the grass clippings fresh and stick them right on my garden places that I wanted to use them. And it was working for me perfectly until we got to the end of the summer and it was more fall and the weather cooled down. I think the only reason I was getting away with it is because the sun was heating those grass clippings to the point where they killed the grass seed. So mistake to me. I want to show you, I mulched this entire bed with grass clippings late in the year. It was probably my last bed to mulch straight from the grass clippings without letting them sit in a compost pile. And look at what I did. It's lovely. Dogs are gonna get right in the way here. Get out! Get out! Come on. Yes. Fat lady. There's Mimu. Check it out. I have a healthy crop of the worst kind of grass. So this is the kind of grass that is not going to be an annual. I'm gonna have to come in here and definitely clean it up. Are you loving that? That little show and tell? So, you know, I got my chives in there. My peonies are back here starting to come on. Hiding in there. Some daylilies. I did get on it, covered it here, but I don't have that much black tarp. So, but underneath there, I know where we can peek. Let's just see. Yeah, see, look, black as dirt. Yay! So I won't have to weed under there. But if I hadn't covered that, it would legit look like that. So I definitely have my work cut out for me here. But I'm okay with that. We can get her done. That's not too much. But note to self, make sure your grass clippings get cooked out and get all the grass seed out before you plant them. Learn from my rookie mistake.